I'd like to talk to you about a company called Pied Piper. What does it do? Good question. Maybe you can help us find an answer. What if Pied Piper was an app that could attract rodents? You know, like the fairy tale for purposes of extermination or to feed your pet snake. We're not here to tell you what to do with your rats. We're here to get you rats stat.
Have you ever wondered why Mark Zuckerberg lives in t-shirts? Why so many tech founders dress like college freshmen rather than titans of industry? Have you noticed the sheer number of companies these days that all have cartoonish, almost childish sounding names? Are you curious why Jeff Bezos suddenly glowed up and got jacked, and why his new wife is so different from his old wife? At first glance, all of these things seem relatively harmless and unrelated. Billionaires wearing hoodies, billion-dollar tech companies branding themselves like children's entertainment companies, the richest men in the world cultivating casual personas. But what if I told you that these things are all connected, and that they're not as harmless as they may seem? For most of human history, elites dressed in a way that made their status and power obvious, and dressing like them was considered a direct challenge to their authority. But we're living in an age where they are going out of their way to dress like us. They drive Toyotas, they joke around on podcasts, they act like teenagers in love with their fashionista girlfriends. This coincides with the accumulation of wealth and power, the likes of which the world has never seen, a betrayal of the societies that helps build them by avoiding taxes and exploiting workers, a complete violation of people's rights through surveillance and data harvesting, and a massive fortune spent on corporate lobbying. And this trend is evolving, with elite fashion undergoing a significant change following the pandemic. So in this video, I want to answer two questions. Why do elites dress like that, and what does it mean for the rest of us? Fashion is inherently political. It has been used throughout history to signal status, to establish hierarchy, and even to police positions of power and prestige in society. And this is most evident in the historical prevalence of sumptuary laws. Sumptuary laws are consumption laws, and they're typically designed with fashion, status, and the link between the two in mind. Some of the earliest sumptuary laws were passed in ancient Rome, and they were specifically designed around the color purple, produced from rare sea snails. Due to the rarity of purple dye, it was incredibly expensive, and thus, wearing purple signaled elite status.
Just enough, I'd say.
I don't know. I think it's too purple. I want to suggest purple without actually wearing it.
It will look less loud in direct light.
What do you think?
Jupiter in life. Resemblance is uncanny.
But the elites in Rome were not pleased with the idea that a merchant might be able to save up enough to purchase a purple cloak, because having money was not enough to make you one of them, and they didn't want anyone to think that it was. Rome introduced sumptuary laws to ensure only elites could wear purple, and the hierarchy didn't stop there. Senators could wear purple stripes on their garments, but only the emperor could wear entirely purple silk robes. And to violate these laws was not just to break a dress code, it was to directly challenge the authority of the emperor. And the prestige and power associated with the color purple persisted well after the days of Caesar and Nero. Medieval Europe was no stranger to sumptuary laws that restricted who could wear particular fabrics, colors, and styles. Silk, velvet, and certain types of fur were reserved for the aristocracy, ensuring those below them on the social totem pole could not impede their status. The elites needed to be easily recognized, and they ensured they were through sumptuary laws. A sumptuary law from 16th century England reads, quote, "Any silk of the color purple, cloth of gold tissued, nor fur of sables, but only the king, queen, king's mother, children, brethren, and sisters, uncles, and aunts, and except dukes, marquises, and earls, who may wear the same in doublets, jerkins, linings of cloaks, gowns, and hose, and those of the garter, purple and mantles only." More than beauty and luxury, though, elite fashion ultimately was designed with impracticality in mind. If there is one thing elite fashion consistently comes down to, it is signaling distance from labor. Delicate fabrics, elaborate embroidery, tight corsets, high heels, and ridiculous towering wigs all served throughout history to signal not just wealth, but leisure as well. American historian and sociologist Thorstein Veblen would later describe this in his 1899 book, The Theory of the Leisure Class. He coined terms such as conspicuous leisure and conspicuous consumption to describe impracticality for the sake of signaling wealth, class, and status. By the way, if you'd like non-Marxist critique of capitalism, Veblen might be the guy for you. The impracticality of elite fashion reached its peak in the 18th century. Extravagant palaces, powdered wigs, silk coats, all part of a carefully choreographed system of status and power. The European nobility in this period were expected to perform their rank through their refined appearances. But this started to change with industrialization and the rise of capitalism. The aristocratic order of the Middle Ages and Renaissance began to decline, and the bourgeoisie came to power, giving rise to the business suit, a dark, tailored set of garments often made of wool, which replaced the delicate silk stockings worn by men of leisure. Impractical corsets also began to fall out of fashion for women, as did many other things, but in this video, I really want to focus on male fashion because I think men signaling status and communicating via fashion is very underexplored, but it's really important to understand. By the Gilded Age, men had adopted much more practical clothing than in ages past, and this differed from previous ages of extreme wealth inequality because the new elites were not aristocrats ordained by God. There was no divine right to rule. There was no papal investiture, especially in America. The elites needed to signal their entitlement to their positions through other means. And during the Gilded Age, this meant a combination of luxury and practicality. Elite men did not want to be misconstrued as working, but they also didn't want to be perceived by working men as undeserving of their wealth and power. And so they had to walk a very fine line between luxury and practicality. They didn't outwardly appear too different from their working male counterparts, but if you studied them for just a moment, you would maybe notice that their suits were much better tailored. They were made of much more expensive material, and these men carried expensive timepieces and silk handkerchiefs a working man would never be able to afford. This, in addition to the supremacy of Enlightenment ideals, led to the Great Male Renunciation, which began in the mid to late 18th century, and led men to abandon beauty in favor of utilitarianism, leaving the ornamentation to the womenfolk. This has roots in the French Revolution, and perhaps inspired the changing fashion of American elites, who were accruing massive fortunes, at least in part, due to lax labor laws, a lack of antitrust laws enabling the formation of corrupt monopolies, etc. All of this wealth inequality made the likelihood of a working class revolt quite high. Utilitarian fashion allowed elite men to craft an image that made them appear less as high society dandies and more as laborers, creating the implication that they had earned their wealth through honest labor and not exploitation. The ruling class in this time period sought to project discipline and rationality as they consolidated their enormous fortunes.
Do you like Mrs. Astor?
Ooh, that's like saying, do you like rain? She is a fact of life that we must live with.
Aunt Ada likes her needlework.
I like ice cream. It doesn't mean I eat it 24 hours a day.
When you say those words, you stab me in the side.
Then it's lucky you have the skin of a rhinoceros.
Are we supposed to applaud our eternal damnation if we have wine with dinner?
My applause was in gratitude that she's finally finished.
I'm stating facts.
I'm not concerned with facts. Not if they interfere with my beliefs.
Male elite fashion in the Gilded Age was luxurious, but it was also understated. And if you're thinking this is reminiscent of the quiet luxury trend that followed the largest wealth transfer in human history, which took place during the pandemic, you would be correct. But we'll talk more about that wealth transfer in a few minutes. Quiet luxury has its roots in the understated, more utilitarian than flamboyant attire of the Gilded Age gentleman, which went on to inspire Ivy League dressing. Ivy League fashion is very understated and, for a time, was almost secretive. It was very much an if you know sort of deal. Tweed jackets, loafers or boat shoes, crisp Oxford shirts, and muted colors. This look maintained the elite rejection of flamboyance in favor of seriousness, which signaled authority both in industry and education. The Ivy League look, as the name implies, is rooted in attendance at one of the nation's top, most competitive schools. Schools that select students based not only on academic performance, but prior family attendance as well. And this look has garnered a lot of attention online. It's not just the old money aesthetic. Dark academia drew heavily from the Ivy League aesthetic too. And TikTok's current fixation on Carolyn Bessette is similar in that her understated if you know fashion signals status without screaming it. Her pieces were well-tailored and minimalistic, and despite not coming from money, she blended seamlessly into the world of the Kennedys. I think there's a belief that if you can mimic this fashion, you will be upwardly mobile in terms of socioeconomic status. And so these old money type trends are very popular in a world where most people are unfortunately downwardly mobile as a result of inflation, stagnating wages, high unemployment and underemployment, especially if you're Gen Z, and widespread wealth inequality.
The underemployment rate for recent college graduates is 41%. Gen Z is doomed. And the only thing our politicians are doing about it is bombing people 10,000 miles away.
What's interesting, though, is that while we obsess over elite fashion on the internet and entertain fantasies of wasps in boat shoes or Barber jackets, the reality is that this is somewhat outdated. The wasps are not the powerhouse they used to be. Sure, they own a lot, but they don't own everything. Our real elites have actually rejected Ivy League aesthetics in favor of something else. And because both the Ivy League aesthetic and the new elite aesthetic are both understated, I think a lot of people have missed the changes that have occurred and are possibly missing the ones that are occurring right now.
The truth that we don't want to pay attention to in global politics is that corporations are getting to be more powerful than countries. And you can see that in a bunch of different data. The Magnificent Seven, the big tech companies here in the US, just surpassed the EU in their value. And like, if they were a country, they would be the most valuable country on earth together. But just Nvidia is bigger than like Germany. It's not just that too. The big three investment firms in the country, like BlackRock, they own 85% of the S&P 500. And BlackRock itself bought the Panama Canal last year, and it outfoxed China, the country of China, in buying that canal. And they don't just own the Panama Canal. BlackRock owns like 46 different ports around the world. And it's not just BlackRock. In India, the Adani Group is giant, and they own quite a lot of India's infrastructure, including airports. And they tried to expand that into Kenya last year, and the only reason they didn't is because American corporations sort of forced them to stop it.
In order to understand who the real elites are, why they dress the way that they do, and how that is changing, and what this means for the rest of us, we need to understand where a lot of their wealth came from and how the elite class fundamentally changed in the mid-20th century. In this time period, we experienced the start of a new age, from the industrial age to the information age. Society shifted away from the traditional industries established during the Industrial Revolution and towards new industries built around information technology. This shift is sometimes referred to as the digital revolution. The digital revolution saw incredible improvements in computer technology, the invention of the internet and social media, and massive breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and biotechnology. Everything from Wikipedia to DNA sequencing to the Labubu craze can be attributed to the digital revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution caused the rise of capitalism, which, when left unregulated, results in massive wealth inequality and widespread poverty. This snowballs into serious social issues, such as high crime rates, high levels of homelessness, and even marriage and baby busts, like we saw following World War I and during the Great Depression. And the digital revolution has done the same thing. Silicon Valley triggered a 2010s gold rush, a tech frenzy with everyone moving out west with only one goal: use a tech startup to consolidate as much wealth and power as possible, and then use that wealth and power to get more, with no regard for who is harmed in the process. And I'm not opposed to startups, commerce, capitalism, anything like that, but Silicon Valley produced unprecedented wealth inequality and concentrated power amongst just a very small handful of individuals, leading to the production of a new class of elites. And anyone who saw this coming and pointed it out in the 2010s was accused of being a literal communist. This coincided with a dramatic change in the elite uniform. The elite uniform of the 2010s was very casual and minimalistic. Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, their uniform had a technical focus intended to signal efficiency and practicality. No silk tights or powdered wigs, no bells and whistles, no peacocking around. Of course, you could argue that putting this much thought into appearing casual is a form of peacocking, especially considering that when this trend began, we had a much more formal culture that expected business casual at the very least, and these guys bucked that. They dressed as though they didn't care about status at all. And our culture praised them for this because as Americans, we tend to interpret a rejection of traditional elite culture as inherently good. Our media especially pushed the idea that this was a good thing, that Mark Zuckerberg's t-shirt signaled his humanity and morality. But this was actually a serious red flag. This elite tech rejection of suits wasn't just about indulging in the privilege of being casual while everyone else was bound by dress codes. It signaled a much deeper, much more significant shift in our culture than a personal preference for t-shirts. And this falls in line with something I mentioned in my previous video about the worth of a college degree. American elites, and especially tech elites, no longer view a college degree as worth anything anymore, and they use a rejection of college as a means of signaling status. Getting an Ivy League degree is not a status symbol for these people. Dropping out of an Ivy League school is a status symbol. The privilege is not earning it, the privilege is rejecting it, while the rest of us have to earn it for even a minuscule chance of working for them. The same could be said for their minimalistic, lazy dressing. Hoodies, jeans, sneakers, bad haircuts, everything aesthetically unappealing. What this signals more than anything is that they don't owe us anything. They don't have to present themselves a certain way. They don't have to put effort in. In fact, it doesn't matter how low effort they are, we are stuck with them. And again, this ties into something I said in my previous video, that the tech and billionaire culture around dropping out of college signals a rejection of public goods and services. These billionaires work really hard to create a self-made, self-taught image, which is often fake, that serves to justify their abdication of elite responsibility. More than just mimicking the understated fashion of the Gilded Age in the sense that they wanted to appear non-intimidating while they consolidated their fortunes, this new elite fashion was designed to craft an image of individualism to make we the people appear entitled if we expect them to invest in the society, our society, that built them. So not only do they not have to put effort into their appearances, they don't want to. Putting effort in sort of undermines the mythos of the tech founder. If he puts effort in, he's not some superhuman, almost godlike figure who is naturally entitled to billions. He's a person, and maybe he's not entitled to all of that. And this founder mythos is integral to Silicon Valley tech culture.
Yo, bro, what time is it?
Oh, it's 4:25.
Bro, why is Elon your lock screen?
He's literally a genius. Bro, did you hear Steven's startup got funded?
Dude, he only raised 1.5 mil. That's like nothing.
Didn't your startup fail?
What are you talking about?
All I'm saying is if you're not from Fremont, Cupertino, or San Ramon, you're from the hood. Like, I don't want to drive my Tesla through there.
Dude, she only lives in a one-bedroom.
What's wrong with that?
Where's she gonna put the office?
Wait, how much do you make again?
I make like 150.
150? Damn. You need food stamps?
Dude, I told the San Jose State girl if she went on a date with me, I'll give her a referral.
You're going on dates with college girls?
Yeah, they're mature for their age.
Bitcoin's cool, but we should really invest in is this cool Solana-based coin that me and my boys are making.
Dude, you know, I just got a gym membership.
Where at?
Equinox, where else?
Dude, tonight we should go to Lab or Raven Bar. It doesn't really matter. I just want to talk to ABGs.
All right, take care, bro.
See you, bro.
Yeah.
Get home safe, man.
Now, 2010 Silicon Valley tech culture was known for a couple of things. Electric scooters, Allbirds, Patagonia vests, a general aversion to anything either aesthetically pleasing or ethically sound.
Wow, when you sent the address, I didn't realize that this was on the Google campus.
Yeah, why would I ever leave campus? I live here, I work here, I don't even have to pay for this food.
Hey, it's nice.
No time for that. I want a 15-minute break, and if Bezos checks my location and sees that I'm gone, he's going to freak. Now, do you want kids?
Can you take the goggles off? It's really distracting.
Well, if we just met in the metaverse like I suggested, then that wouldn't be an issue, would it? It's been so hard.
Anyway, none of these features of 2010's tech culture were by accident. Every single one of them paints a picture of ambition, greed, corruption, and unscrupulousness beneath a veneer of easygoing, laid-back informality designed to create the appearance of safety. Take, for instance, the Patagonia vest. The Patagonia vest is an interesting one because if you ask any tech bro or even any non-tech bro why tech bros love a Patagonia vest, they'll probably tell you it's about functionality. They're just really practical. And I call BS on that. It has nothing to do with functionality and everything to do with branding. Patagonia is a nature brand with a very good reputation. Its mission statement reads, quote, "Build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis." The billionaire founder even went so far in 2022 as to sign over ownership and ensure all of the company's profits will go to combating climate change. By wearing these Patagonia vests, tech bros were able to appropriate the good faith Patagonia had built up with the public to build an association with a reputable billion-dollar company to craft a positive image without putting in the work to deserve a positive image. If you're familiar with tech culture, this cutting of ethical corners will come as no surprise to you. Tech bros did something similar with the Prius back in the day, a car Mark Zuckerberg himself used to drive, a car with a good reputation. The Prius was a revolutionary car, an ethical vehicle with a small environmental footprint. And driving one allowed a person to brand themselves as environmentally conscious. Even to this day, if you see a Prius on the road, it will probably have a coexist window decal. And Silicon Valley's hyperfixation on the Prius was an early version of greenwashing, by which companies falsely project an environmentally conscious image to mislead consumers, typically by using terms such as green and eco-conscious. When we talk about greenwashing, we're usually talking about products, but throughout the 2010s, billionaires, and especially tech billionaires, greenwashed themselves. Sam Bankman-Fried's effective altruism is probably the best example of this. Elon Musk is also a proponent of this ideology. And all of this greenwashing coincided with jaw-dropping ethics violations, the mass accumulation of wealth through predatory means, to put it lightly, a flagrant disregard for people's privacy and data security, and almost $500 million spent lobbying Congress. But it goes even deeper than the casual clothes they wear and the relatively affordable cars they drive. Because the 2010s tech aesthetic wasn't just casual and minimalistic. You could argue it was outright childish. And this is most evident in the broader branding efforts of tech companies. Their logos were very cartoonish and playful, and their names were often kind of silly, things like Tubi, Uber, and Splunk, often spelled out in rounded fonts and bright colors. This is actually something of a meme at this point because it became so common in the 2010s for companies to brand themselves this way. Social media sites have similar branding. Twitter with its blue bird, Snapchat with its cute ghost icon, Reddit with its little mascot, which by the way, I learned in researching this video is called Snoo, which really falls in line with what I'm saying about tech branding. They weren't doing serious business. They were being friendly and fun. And we all kind of believed the party line that this was due to general millennial culture being quirky and cringe. The reality is that this branding didn't just happen. It's not just downstream of a coincidental millennial preference for informal culture. It's not an accident that billion, even trillion-dollar companies with enormous geopolitical influence chose to brand themselves like children's media companies. These companies made a concerted effort to brand themselves as seemingly harmless, using non-intimidating names, logos, and mascots. And their founders and spokespersons contributed to this branding by wearing t-shirts and going on podcasts. And I think as we all know by now, these companies are anything but harmless. All of this branding was designed essentially to make us lower our guard as they gobbled up all of the wealth and power. The point was to regulate society's temperature while they violated our rights. And now that they have consolidated their wealth and power, they're starting to go mask off about it. And we can see this in how tech branding and fashion is evolving in the 2020s. Tech elites established a culture of invisible power in the 2010s. No ceremony, very few titles, as little visibility as possible. But that culture is falling out of fashion in favor of a much flashier culture, one that doesn't shy away from visible power so much. And that's not an accident. It's hard to remember, especially if you're my age and you were just a kid when all of this was going on, but Zuckerberg used to lean into the geeky tech guy bit, and Elon Musk used to do the same. Both of these men, along with several other billionaires, had a 2020s rebrand, and again, this is no accident. It's also no accident that the tech billionaires are the ones doing this. Gone are the days of Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos cosplaying as Silicon Valley's version of hipsters in their skinny jeans and Priuses. No longer is Zuckerberg's car of choice a Prius. His new favorite, he said online in 2024, is a Cadillac, which isn't all that flashy for a guy worth billions, but it's definitely not a Prius. The pressure for him to be pictured in a Prius has been alleviated by his elimination of threats to his wealth and power. He doesn't have to act so coy anymore. He has a president who's willing to play ball. Now are the days of Palantir doing data analysis for the military-industrial complex, Tesla and Microsoft building massive data centers that are heavily polluting some of the poorest communities in the United States, and Amazon assembling a surveillance regime that would make the worst dictators jealous. And need I remind anyone of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal? Elon Musk now wears cowboy boots and posts photos of his personal firearms, and Mark Zuckerberg now does MMA, and has slowly started looking less like a lizard and more like a human being. Jeff Bezos started taking steroids to keep up with his new muscle mommy. These guys are shedding their timid skins and asserting their dominance. More than that, they're using performative masculinity to cozy up to the right in hopes of escaping regulation and taxation. But that's for another video. If you pay attention to the names of tech companies, you'll notice a similar trend. Gone are the days of goofy, cartoonish company names, and the branding that went along with those names. A key turning point in this was Facebook's Meta rebrand, from an innocent website you could talk to your friends and family on to a mysterious, futuristic entity. The most prominent tech companies are now called Palantir, OpenAI, SpaceX. The names are mechanistic and really quite intimidating. They're not trying to seem friendly and harmless anymore, because it doesn't matter what we think. So why are these changes occurring? Well, it's like I said. These guys have succeeded in the consolidation of wealth and power. Tech billionaires are growing less shy, and that means they're winning, and they know it. Jeff Bezos no longer has the philanthropic wife who wrings her hands about their wealth. He has the wife who spends a fortune going to outer space.
We're so connected, more connected than you realize, because you just see right here, you see states and all these things that divide us, but we're not.
A key turning point in all of this was the pandemic, during which the largest wealth transfer in human history occurred. An Oxfam International report titled Inequality Kills reveals that with the help of government policies, the wealth of the world's 10 richest men more than doubled during the pandemic, increasing from $700 billion to $1.5 trillion. This coincided with 99% of humanity experiencing a decline in income, with over 160 million people being pushed into poverty. So if you're noticing a newfound confidence in our elites, it's probably because they consider themselves truly untouchable. There's a similar newfound brazenness in our financial elites, all of whom benefited from this wealth transfer, and are about to benefit from another great wealth transfer. As the boomers die off, their children and grandchildren are poised to inherit roughly $100 trillion in assets. But it's not unlikely that government policy will ensure the majority of this wealth winds up in the hands of a select few, just as government policy aided this select few during the last wealth transfer. All of that is to say, these elite wolves are shedding the, quite frankly, unconvincing sheep's clothing that they wore during the 2010s. And if they feel safe doing so, that does not bode well for the rest of us.